Hey everyone, welcome to the second part of the improved Morse coder video. In this video, we are going to implement the code needed to beep out Morse code into the terminal and print it at the same time, just like this. Now, if you haven't seen the last video on Morse code that I made, I suggest you go and watch this because I will be using the code that we wrote in that video. So go do that, and then come back here and we can get going with this one. So the first thing we need are sounds to actually play when we beep out the Morse code. For those sounds, I'm actually going to go to Wikipedia. Do I have it? I don't have it open. And Wikipedia has all of the noises for each Morse code sound. So that's a 0. But the ones I'm interested in are E and T. And that is because E is a single dot. So if we play that, it's a dot, and T is a dash. Okay, so we are going to download these files. We are going to just open a new tab. Yeah, so we have E right here, and we have T right here, or dot and dash. So we're going to download the E file, and that downloads. And now we are going to download the T file, or the dash. So that's all good. And then we are going to move them into our resources file. So when they're downloaded, just copy them in here. So I'm going to say, you don't have to do this in the terminal, but I'm going to do it here. So and then same thing for the E file. Okay, so once you have your sound files in the resources folder, we're just going to rename them, and we're going to rename the E file to .ogg, and the T file to .ogg. Okay, so we have everything, all the resources we need. Now we just have to write some more code. So let's do that. Actually, before we continue, we need to install the pygame pip package, and this will be used so that we can play the Morse code sounds, on a cross-platform. So to do that, well, I actually already did it earlier. I made a conda environment called Morse code. So I'm just going to say conda activate Morse code. And so I already have the pygame package installed here, but to install it, you would simply do pip install pygame. And it's telling me that I already have it because I already installed it, but it's very easy to install. Just type that command and it will get it set up for you. So now we can write our code. So let's come up here to the top of the Morse class, and we need to create a couple more variables, and they are the path to the dash and dot sound files. So we're going to say dot sound file is equal to os dot path dot join dir name, and then resources slash dot ogg. Okay, and same thing for the dash sound file. So we're going to say dash sound file is equal to os.path.join dir name resources slash dash.ogg. All right, so that's all we need to do there. And now we can actually start the bulk coding. This is where things get kind of interesting. So we're going to make another static method, and this is going to be called print and play, and that's because it's going to take in a Morse code string and print out the characters and play the sound. So we're just going to say def print and play, but we're just going to say Morse string, and then we are going to set a rate, and this is going to be equal to 0.5, we'll say, or 0.4 is the default rate. You can change that to whatever you want. This is the rate in seconds at which the Morse code will, signal each beep. So there will be half a second delay in between each beep. You can change that number to whatever you want, really. So after that, we are going to make a variable called output buffer, and this is just going to contain all of the current outputted characters, and this will allow us to dynamically print Morse code onto the screen without having to print new lines for every character we print. So output buffer is equal to an empty string, and then Morse if I could spell Morse sequence is equal to an array, and this will be used to store each character in the Morse string along with its corresponding sound file. So now we're going to split up the Morse words again, much like we did with the decode function. So we're going to say Morse words is equal to Morse string dot split, and we're going to split based off of double spaces. And oops, we don't need that. And now we're going to say for Morse car group. Now I say car group because we want, in this case, we really want to differentiate or distinguish between a Morse code character and a Unicode character, or a dot and a dash, because otherwise things will get a little bit confusing later on. So for Morse car group in Morse words dot split. Actually, we can bring this up here, and we can just say Morse cars is equal to Morse words dot split and space, and then we can say for Morse car group in Morse car cars. This really should be Morse car groups. So it'll be finally, after modifying it a ton of times, for Morse car group in Morse car groups. All right. So now we want to loop over each individual Unicode character, so the dots and dashes in the Morse car group. So for car in Morse car group, we want to check if the character is equal to a dot. Then we want to do this code. So do something here. We'll figure that out later. And else if car is equal to a dash, then we want to do something else. So we'll work on this in a little bit. So we need a variable to store the name of the sound file that's going to be played for this character. So if the character in the Morse code character is a dot, then we want it to play the dot.ogg file. If it's a dash, then we want it to play the dash.ogg file. So to do that, we simply say sound file is equal to Morse dot sound file. Okay. And same thing for down here, except we say sound file is equal to Morse dot dash sound file. Okay. So let's get rid of those stupid little comments there. Okay, so now we have to append the current character, the current character to the output buffer. And this is so we can dynamically print the characters as their sound is being played on in the terminal window. So we're going to say output buffer plus equals car. Okay, so now things get a little tricky because we have to do a little bit of threading, and that is so that the sound files can be played separately and they don't block each other. So let us just come over here and import the threading module. And this actually isn't, I guess it's not too complicated. It's just a little bit annoying if you haven't worked with threads before, but it's only a couple lines of code really. So we're going to say sound thread is equal to threading dot thread, and the target is actually going to be equal to a function that does not exist yet. We will create that in just a second. So we're going to just leave that blank for now. And the args are going to be the sound file and the output buffer. Okay, so now let's make this missing function, and this, or method rather. This method will take in the sound file and the output buffer. It will play the sound file and print the output buffer. So I know that may not make a lot of sense at the moment, but this function is actually quite simple once you actually see how it works. So, or it's a method, not a function. Excuse me. So we're going to say static method, and then def Morse print. And like I said, it'll take the sound file and the output buffer. And then we print, and we print the output buffer. And then we set the end equal to \r. And this will just tell Python that we want to continue to print on the same line. And so anything written on this out onto the screen will be overwritten, and we will print the new output buffer. But since we're adding the Morse code character or the Unicode character to the output buffer every time we loop over Morse code characters, it will appear as though new characters are being appended to the screen. So that's really nice. So like I said, this will just print it out for us nice and dynamically. And now we actually play the sound file. And to do this, we have to call, actually first up here at the very top of the file, that's my phone, excuse that. We have to call, or we have to import pygame first. So import pygame. And VS Code does not recognize that pygame is there, so it doesn't really matter. It is there because I installed it, but I just fixed it there. I just told it to use the Morse code environment. Anyways, first we have to initialize the pygame audio mixer, which will allow us to play the sound. So we're going to say pygame.mixer.init, and that'll just set it up for us. And then down here in the Morse print, or I should rename this like audio print. Yeah, we'll call it audio print. Down here in the audio print method, we say pygame.music.load. Nope, I'm sorry. Pygame.mixer.music.load, and then we pass in the sound file, and then we say pygame.mixer.music.play, and this will play the sound file. Okay, so now we can set this target argument of the thread to morse.audioprint. Okay, so we're actually almost done with this. We are also going to create a small class to store the Unicode character along with its corresponding Morse code beep sound. So I'm just going to come up here at the top and say class, I'm going to call it Morse audio. You can call it whatever you want. But it's just going to take in, well, self, obviously. It's going to take in the thread, or the sound thread, and the character of the the Morse code character. So the Morse code character is made up of smaller Unicode characters like a dot or a dash. So it will take in either a dot or a dash. And we're just going to say self dot car is equal to car, and self dot thread is equal to thread. Okay, so now we're going to make a method called play, and this will be to start the thread or to play the sound. And we are going to say, well, def play, and then self.thread.start. And I forgot this needs to take self, so play self, and then def stop. Self is, an argument, and then self.thread.join. Okay, so that's all we need to do there. Now we can come back down here finally, and continue working on this. So now we're going to say Morse audio is equal to Morse audio, the class, and we're going to pass in the sound thread and the character. Actually, I'm going to rename sound thread to audio thread. The names do not matter as long as they make sense for the most part. I'm not the best at coming up with names. It's something that I've been working on and trying to improve, but here I am renaming things as I'm programming. Okay, anyways, after that, we are going to append this Morse audio instance to the Morse sequence array or list. So we're going to say Morse sequence dot append Morse audio. All right. And now we are going to break out of the for car and Morse car groups loop. We're done with that. And now we are going to append a space to the output buffer. That's because we just looped over a group of Morse code characters, and we appended each dot and dash for that character to the output buffer. So now we need a space to separate the character. So we're going to say output buffer plus equals just a space. And then we are also going to append a space to the Morse sequence. So we're going to say Morse sequence dot append space, and then we're going to break out of the Morse car group loop, and we are going to append 2 spaces to the output buffer and 2 spaces to the Morse sequence. So output buffer plus equals 2 spaces, and Morse sequence plus equals, not plus equals, dot append 2 spaces. And this is because by this point we will have finished the Morse words. So now we will have gone over the Morse words. So we need to append 2 spaces. Oh, I just realized we missed a for loop. So we need to loop over the Morse words, obviously. Okay, so yeah, that was not good. So we have to say for Morse word in Morse words, and we are just going to indent all of this, and that should work, except we are going to change Morse words right here to Morse word. Sorry about that. That was a very big mistake. And if you try to run your code at this point, it will have not worked at all, because we forgot to split up the characters we forgot to actually loop over the words. So we can't get the characters in the words if we don't actually loop over the words. Okay, but now everything should work. And now we actually write the code where, so we can break out of these loops. We don't have to do any more looping. Actually, we do have to do more. We have to write one more for loop. and this will loop over the Morse sequence, and it will attempt to play the Morse audio from this class, since the Morse sequence is going to be mostly made up of the Morse audio classes, and then of course spaces depending on where, what part of the Morse code it is, whether it's a space in between characters or words. So inside of this function, not in any other for loop, we're going to say for, I'm going to do it down here, for I, and I'm going to call this Morse audio car in enumerate, and we're going to pass in the Morse sequence. So the Morse audio car will be an instance of the Morse audio class, and we are going to first check if I is equal to the length of the Morse sequence minus 2, then we want to stop this loop immediately. This will be so that the program ends as soon as it's done printing out and playing the Morse string, because otherwise there will be a delay, and you'll see why in a second. So now we want to check if the type of Morse audio car is not equal to a string. And the reason for that is we are appending spaces to the Morse sequence list to distinguish between a group of Morse code characters and Morse code words. So if the type is not equal to a string, we want to say Morse audio car dot play, and this will run the play method that we have up here. So it will start the audio thread, and then we want to pause for whatever the passed in rate is in the function. So for half a second by default, and so that means we need to import the time module. So we're going to do that, and then come back down here, and we're going to say time dot sleep, and just pass in the rate. Okay, so now we're going to check else if the Morse audio car is equal to a single space. Then we want to sleep for a little bit longer than the supplied rate. So I'm going to just say rate times 1.3. So it'll sleep for a third of the time of the supplied rate. And then we're going to say if Morse audio car is equal to 2 spaces, then we're going to sleep for 1.5 times the supplied rate. So time dot sleep rate times 1.5. You can play around with these values a little bit to make the time in between each Morse code word or Morse code character a little bit longer or slower, depending on your likings. But anyways, this will execute, or will sleep for rate times 1.3 seconds when we're separating Morse code character groups, and we'll sleep for rate times 1.5 seconds when we're separating Morse code words. And now we are very close to being done. So now we're going to break out of that for loop, and we are going to say for Morse audio car in, again, we're going to check we're going to go into the Morse sequence and loop over it again, and we're going to stop all of the threads. But first we have to check if the type of the Morse audio car is not equal to a string. Then we will say Morse audio car dot stop. Okay, that's all we need to do there. And then we just need to call the print method function, not a method. Is it? You know what, my terminology for functions and methods is probably not as clear as it should be, so I will have to fix that. But anyways, we're just going to call print with nothing inside of it, and this is so all of our output buffer is actually displayed, because when you call print and you set the end to a character like \r, or the start, the \r I believe is the start of the standard out, it will not actually display anything until a new line is printed. So right here, we're just printing a new line so that everything is displayed. And I believe that is all we need to do. I believe the program is finished. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to main.py, and I'm just going to import, actually I'm not going to, no I will, I'll import sys, and we're going to say input is equal to, well not input text is equal to sys.argv and index 1. Okay, so we'll say Morse code is equal to Morse.encode, and we'll pass in the input text, turn the input text into Morse code, and now we are going to print the Morse code onto the screen and play the dits and das, or the dots and dashes, with the audio files. So we're going to say Morse.print and play, and this takes in the Morse string, and so the Morse code, and the rate we're going to leave at 0.5, so we don't have to modify anything there. So hopefully now when I run this program, I say Python main.py, and then in quotation marks, we're going to say SOS. And it seems to be working. Oh, and of course you could extend this program to take in Morse code and decode it into plain text very simply, just by changing this to the decode function and change the variable name. I'm just going to call this output instead, so it's more generic, and then we can just print output. And now this will translate Morse code into plain text. As you can see, it says SOS. Okay, that officially puts the wrap on the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Talk to you later.